Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf lamed of Basra. And as mentioned yesterday, with the transition to um, Rashbam, we are going to get a little bit more explanation to help guide us, but also a shorter daf in terms of number of words of Gemara. And so we'll see how that will play out over the coming weeks and months. Let me share my screen and we will get started. So where are we and what are we doing? We are continuing our discussion of how one creates a chazaka, which is the presumption. Now, chazaka, again, has a number of meanings throughout Shas, and we are talking about chazaka, the presumption that the person occupying a property is in fact the owner. And we are talking about the limitations of chazaka. There are certain times where you might have thought that you got a chazaka, but because of the situation of the original owner, sorry, you don't have a chazaka. And so as we pick up on the seventh line from the bottom of Chavtet Amabet, the Gemara addresses a situation of conflicting claims, the first of a series of 6 cases that we'll be dealing with today. So let's take a look. We'll see all the 6 cases. That'll be wonderful. All right. So Hahud Amrle Lechavre. So a person says to this other guy. So again, I'm going to have on the screen sort of the identities of these people. So this is the original owner speaking. My boys behind Besa. What you doing in my home? Now it really doesn't say my home, but clearly that's the impression. So I'm going to translate it that way. So Amrle, he said to him, Minach Zvinte, I bought it from you. What are you talking about? Of course I'm here, right? The achlit shnei chazaka, and I've been here. I've been consuming it. I've been using it for the last years of a chazaka, meaning at least 3. So Amar Le, the original owner, says back, Ana b'shchuni gavai havai. I've been in the inner room. What are you talking about? You've been here because I've allowed you. As Rashbam says, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lines up near the end of the line. It says, Ana b'shchunai gavai have, b'chadarim hapnimim. I was in the inner rooms. Paisa. Ikar dirati was the main place where I've been living. V'hayiti over derech alecha. And I passed by you. So don't say, it's not like I went through a back door and therefore and therefore you would have a chazaka on this piece and I would keep my room. No, I've been going through your space every day and I have seen you there. I've been using the outer house with you. I've been using the kitchen. I've been using the dining room. I've been using the laundry. What are you talking about? I'm here. Shadarta Bo Birshuti, you've just lived here because I've given you permission. And that's why I've never complained. So, because I'm just a nice guy. That's the kind of guy I am. So now says back to the guy, Amar Le, L'kamei de Rav Huna, Asul kamei de Rav Nachman. I'm sorry. They came in front of Rav Nachman. Amar Le, Rav Nachman said to him, take a look in the Rashbam. It's the next line in the Rashbam. Lemachzik, right? He's saying it to the person who is the occupier. Zil beror achilasach. You need to go and clarify your consumption, your use of the house. What does that mean? Again, back into the Rashbam. Zil barur achilasach. Have edim, bring witnesses. Shadarta babaye levadcha gimel shanim. You have to show that you lived in the house alone for these 3 years. Shelo oto sheba imach. Below oto sheba imach, and not with the person who came with you to court. Kedin kol cheskas gimel shanim. That's the rule of living there 3 years. Shitzarich lahevi edim. You need a complete chazaka. It can't be partial. You can't just say that I lived in this little area by myself and you were in the whole rest of the house. I can't make that claim about your guest bedroom. So, right, that's not going to be acceptable. So therefore, Rav Nachman rules that the one who is the original owner is going to get it unless the occupier is able to bring sufficient witnesses. Amrle Rava. Rava says, 1 second, that can't be the law. Hachadina, is that the ruling? Because listen, Hamotzi Mechaveru Olav Haraya. We have a principle in Judaism that the one who is trying to take away something is the one who has to bring the proof. And you don't have, and so as a result, it's you, the person who is living in the inner room, who's trying to take away the outer rooms from the other person. You need to show proof that you have it. So Virami de Rava Adarava, Virami de Rav Nachman Adarav Nachman. And you know what? It's interesting. We end up with a situation where there seems to be an internal contradiction to Rava and an internal contradiction to Rav Nachman. Because listen to the following case. Dehahu, there was this person, as we turn to Lamed Amud Aleph, de Amr le Lechavre, who said to his friend, Kol nichse devar bar sisin mazbina lach. Listen, I am selling you everything that was part of the home of Bar Sisin. Havai hahi ara, but it happened to be that I owned, in addition to the property that I actually bought from Bar Sisin, there happened to be a property that was called the Havim Mikre de Be Bar Sisin, that was called Be Bar Sisin. So it's a very confusing situation where I bought property. We'll say, I bought property from, let's say, Ken, and I say I'm selling you all of Ken's property, and there happens to be another piece of property that I have that is like the Ken's ranch. And so it's also called Ken's property, even though this Ken never owned it. Maybe some other Ken owned it. But the point is that I said I'm selling you all of Ken's property. So the question is that property that happens to have the name Ken on it, is it also included? So Amar Le, the seller says, I say, Ha live the Bay Bar Season. That wasn't actually a part of the Bar Season estate. The Ikruyehu de Mikrai de Bay Bar Sisin. It just happened to have that name. So Asl Kameh de Rav Nachman. So they came in front of Rav Nachman. Ukma Bida de Lokeach. And he said it goes to the buyer. Now listen, what did we say before? Right? Remember that the last time Rav Nachman ruled for the seller. Rav Nachman ruled for the guy who's on the inner side, saying that the guy who's on the outer side needs to bring proof. And now he's ruling for the buyer. So Amrle Rava, Dina Haki, and Rava is now going to say the exact opposite. Hamotzi Mechaveru Alav. Now he says the exact same words, and of course that will be our answer. But he ends up saying that it is the seller who wins in this case, even though earlier he had said that it was the buyer who wins. So here it seems to be again a contradiction. So Kashya de Rava ad Rava, Kashya de Rav Nachman ad Rav Nachman. De Rava. So now we respond. De Rava ad Rava lo Kashya. So really, it's not a problem between Rava and Rava, because I will tell you the following: Hasam mocher kai b'nichsei, haka lokeach kai b'nichsei. Who's holding it? Where it was the seller who's holding it in the case of Bar Sisin, so I'm going to keep it with the seller. And where the buyer is holding it, like in the case of the inner house and the outer house, so then I'm going to keep it with the buyer. The Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman lam nami lo kashya. And similarly, there's no really contradiction between Rav Nachman and Rav Nachman. Kaven de Amrle, de Bei Bar Sisin, because what did the seller say? The seller was explicit. He said, the Bei Bar Sisin, the Mikrai, the Bei Bar Sisin, and this place is called Bei Bar Sisin. Aledi de Ramya Leguluye. He needs to show the Lab de Bei Bar Sisin. He has to show that it's actually not. He has to bring proof that it belonged to some other Ken, as in my example. So Aval Hacha Lo Yehayela de Nukit Shtara. But here the it's not as it the person who's holding the property. All right, let's treat him as holding a deed. Milo amrinan le kaim shtarach v'klum b'nichse, wouldn't we tell the person, listen, if you have a contract and this other person is telling us that that contract is a forgery, you need to prove that it's a valid contract. So too here, we're going to make you prove that you actually had a real chazakah. Same kind of idea. All right. So therefore, we've got that situation, right? So take a look at Rashbam. Rashbam will help us out a
But
little
if
bit.
you're saying, if in this case with the inner and the outer person,
Mm-hmm.
and we're saying that the outer person can claim the property, right? Because he says that the inner person has to bring a raya.
No, that's not what Rav Nachman said. Rav Nachman said the outer person needs to bring the raya. The inner person is the original owner, and we're going to say that he has undone the chazaka unless the outer person brings a raya that the inner person was never actually there.
The outer person has to bring, right. So that we're saying that the inner person has the, well,
The inner
no,
person wins. The outer
well,
person has to bring proof.
but the outer person, wait, didn't we say earlier that the outer person is muksach and the inner person has to bring a raya?
That's what Rava says.
Okay, so in that case, according to Rava, how can you make that claim? Because the inner person is there. If he's there, why isn't he muksak?
Well, he's muksuk on the inner room, but he's not muksuk on the outer room.
But the outer person wants to claim he wasn't even there, that he had already bought
That's
the whole
true.
place.
That's true. But the point is that at least with respect to the outer room, you ask a good question. Meaning, it does when the inner person when Rava says Hamotzi Mechavero Alav Araya, that the inner person is the one who has to bring a proof. Does he have to bring a proof to about the whole house or just about the outer room? But it seems like the only thing that he would have to bring a proof is about the outer room. The inner person needs to bring proof that the outer room belongs to him because the outer person is holding on to it. So as a result, if he's going to kick him out, he needs to bring proof because the outer
But
person
he's
is the muksa.
muksak on the inner room, right?
Yes. There's no question
Okay, so
that
if he's
according to even
muksak on
according to
the
Rava,
right,
right, the inner room person doesn't need to bring proof about the inner room. He needs to just bring proof about the outer room.
so if he's muksak on the inner room, wouldn't the outer person have to be moda that the inner person walked through the outer section to get to his inner section? Wouldn't it be moda? There is no back room, no back door. So if
Yeah, well,
that's the case,
that is part
so,
of the debate, right? I
so
mean,
if that's the case,
remember we're
then the
still
outer person knows that the inner person was going in front of him every day. And wouldn't he complain and say, "What are you doing in my house? Because I bought it from you." But the original claim was the inner person said, "What are you doing in my house?"
correct. Now, look, the bottom line is that in somebody in these cases is lying, right? Somebody in these cases is lying because the outer person's claim is that I don't know what you're talking about. You were never here, right? Because if the person says that they admits to them being there, then it's over, right? We're dealing with a situation where there are conflicting claims. The fact pattern in and of itself is uncertain.
Right, because
Okay.
why?
In fact, let's
Because
go
you're going
back
to
to
ask, why does the outer person not say, "I'm mukzak on the whole house"? He knows there's an inner room, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, let's take a look and take a look at Tosos. Tosos has some additional details. Last Tosos Kuf Teram Bet. I skipped it, but I think it will be helpful. So Bishchunai Gavai Havi, I was in the inner room. Vahavi Li, and the Kuf takes us to the word derech. Derech Alecha. I had a path that I had to go by you. Veneerly, and it seems to me, Tosos is saying, Shahayalo Edim Shahaya Bishchunei Gavai, that he has witnesses that he was in the inner room. Yodim, but they don't know how he left the house.
Oh,
Edim Kalal, because if he didn't have any witnesses at all, the habish b'chunei gavai, that he was in the inner room. Heiki habik ka'amar Rav Nachman zil baruch ilascha. How could Rav Nachman rule for the inner guy? To atu yesh lahem edi chazaka, that he needs to bring edi chazaka. Leida shalo haya hama'ara ba'oto bayit kol shalosh shanim. How does he cause him to have to bring proof that the witnesses would know that he was not there for all 3 years? Because the im yomer hama'arer hayiti imach shnei yamim. Because let's say I'm the one in the inner room, Stan's the one in the outer room, and I go to Stan and I say, you know what? There were 2 days in the last 3 years that I happened to be in that inner room. And so that's why I never complained, because I was in the inner room for 2 days. The aim shlemo. So as a result, you don't have 3 full years of occupying my house. V'ha'edim einam yodim yafsid. So question mark. So the point is that Tosfos is like incredulous that in that situation I would somehow win. That Stan would have actually, because of course, remember that we could be dealing with a situation where Stan actually bought the property. So Stan actually bought the property. Unfortunately, he lost the deed. And so as a result, he doesn't have the contract that shows that he owns it. And so now I come in and I happen to have been there for 2 days. Maybe it was when Stan was away. And I say, well, I lived there for 2 days. You need to prove that I wasn't there on those 2 days. And how's he going to do that? That's ridiculous. So as a result, that's why Tosfos is saying that that's not sufficient, because I could make that claim and I won't have witnesses, and then you're going to have to bring even better witnesses. It's ridiculous. Now, on the other hand, if in fact I was there and I have witnesses that I was there, that's a different story. And so as a result, that again, I hope that helps clarify the situation. But the bottom line, Ken, is that the 2 claimants are claiming diametrically opposed things that can't both be true. And so as a result, one of them is telling something that's not true. And our effort here in creating this concept of chazaka is to say, based on the factual situation on the ground, who do we think is more likely to be the truth teller? Okay. So
in the end, Tosfos says, "Einim einan yodim yafsid."
a question mark. There's a question mark that he right. The im, because it's that, and are you going to tell me that somebody that that the inner guy could claim to be there for 2 days without any witnesses, and now as a result of the inability of the muhsak to hold it and show with witnesses that on those 2 days the guy wasn't there, that as a result he's going to lose? That can't be the implication of Tosfos. It's important to read it with the punctuation.
Right.
Here, that's a question mark.
Right. I see that. Eidim einam yodim yafsid. Right. They wouldn't know. They don't.
How he's going to lose? The witnesses don't know. I mean, the witnesses know that the guy was there for 3 years. They know Stan was there for 3 years.
Right.
But they just don't happen to know about June 16th and March 3rd. That's ridiculous. That they should still lose. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that's case number 1. Okay, so all right. So Hahuda Amarle Lechavre. So case number 2. Let's scroll the screen. So a second. So case number 2. Hahuda Amar Lechavre, my boys Bahai Besa. What are you doing in my home? Amar Le Minox Vante. I bought it from you. Teshnei Chazaka, and I've been here for the years necessary for a Chazaka. Amar Le Beshuki Barai Havai. I was in an outer marketplace, meaning I was out of the country, right? Rashbam says, Amar Le, 1, 2, 3, 4th line down in the wide lines near the bottom of Lamed Aleph. Amar Le, Ana Beshuki Barai Havi, Be'eretz Marchakim Makom, Makom She'ena Shayaros Mitsuyos. I was in a faraway place where the caravans are infrequent. V'lo yadati, and I didn't know. And that's why I didn't complain. We won't go through the rest of the Rashbam there, but in any event, that's the bottom line. I didn't know. And so as a result, you don't get a good chazaka. Amar Le, whoa. Stan, who will again, I'll be the original owner. Stan will be the claimant.
So that's he's
Stan
a
says back
squatter.
to me,
He's a
what?
squatter. This guy just walked. According to the
Well,
owner, this
again,
guy
according to
just
me,
walked
he's a
in.
squatter.
What?
According to me, he's a squatter. But
Right,
according
right,
to Stan,
right,
he's the owner. He
right,
bought it from me. Remember, don't we have to be very careful that either person could be lying. We
right,
should not assume, because remember, it's very important to remember that the chazakas that we're talking about, as is reflected in the cases as we're describing them, all involve the quote unquote squatter claiming ownership based on purchasing the property from you. So
right,
they need to have that claim. Without that claim, everybody agrees that they lose. It is not sufficient to go into your neighbor's home and say, "Oh, I'm living here for 3 years because they happen to be, they moved to Israel for a couple of years, and now they come back and they say, oh, well, it's ours, it belongs to us." No, that doesn't work unless you also claim that you bought it. That does just simply doesn't work. So again, so now what does Stan say back to me? A very great comment. Amar le vaha isli sade. I got witnesses, Stan says, to kol shata hava asis tlasin yoma, that you would come into the city for 30 days every year. So I have witnesses that you were around. So don't tell me that you were always in foreign land. Amar le. So now I say back to him, Tlasin yome beshuki havataridna. No, that it's true I was here, but you should know my business is really good. I do a really good business, and I was very busy in the marketplace every day. And let's take a look at Rashbam, last Rashbam on the page, 4 lines up. Beshuki havataridna. Limkor schorasai. I was trying to sell my merchandise, and buy others. I'm a buyer and seller. I'm a big macher. I do the buying and selling. I had no idea that you were living in my house. I got multiple houses in this city, and I happen to choose to live downtown in my house, in the financial district, because I wanted to get ready to go to the markets very early in the morning and do my analysis and do my buying and selling. But Osair, in that same city, Shahaya Mita'achasin Sham, Kol Shloshim Yom, and I was really busy there the whole 30 days. V'yesh Mefarshim. Now, V'yesh Mefarshim, B'shuk I have a Taridna, that when it says that he was in the shuk and therefore busy, V'lo Hayali Panai Limchot. I knew about you, but I didn't have a chance to complain. Even though I knew. But Rashbam says that doesn't make sense to him. Who is it that actually says that opinion? That's actually Rabbeinu Gershom. We won't go through it inside, but if you take a look on the left side of the page, you'll find that Rabbeinu Gershom, who lived a couple of generations earlier, actually lived before Rashi even, made that, had that opinion. But again, Rashbam thinks otherwise, and I think the pashtus and the easier way to understand and justify the Gemara's conclusion, which we'll see in just a moment, is to say like the Rashbam. So
It
Amar
seems
Rava.
like this is an internal contradiction where this fellow says, I was away. I was in another country. I didn't even know you were there. And now he says, well, I was busy, but I knew you were there.
No. That's why that you're absolutely right. According to Rabbeinu Gershom, there's a little bit of an internal contradiction. So as a result, that may be part of the reason that Rashbam prefers to say, no, I never knew you were there. Yes, I was even in the city for 30 days, but during those 30 days, it was the market days. It was a very busy marketplace, and I just never even made it towards my home. And so I was in my other home, and as a result, I had no idea that you were there. Because let's take a look and see how Rava rules. Amar Rava, Ovid inish to call plus and yomi tarid b'shuka. It does happen that a person can be so busy for 30 days with the marketplace that he won't actually know that the guy took over his house. And so that could actually be the case. And so as a result, Rava rules in favor of the original owner in this case. So again, that's and doesn't say significantly, he does not say hamotzi mechavero alavaraya. So now it could be that that he has witnesses that all the things that he's saying were true. But in any event, the bottom line is that even though he was there in town for 30 days, that was not enough for Stan to develop a chazaka. So that is case number 2. Now we go to case number 3. Hahuda Amar Lechabre, my buzz bahayar. What are you doing on my land? Again, it doesn't say my land, but that's clearly the implication. Amar Le, he says back to him, what are you talking about? Miplanius vinte. I bought it from this guy. The Amar Le disvanaminlach, and he told me that he bought it from you. So Amar Le, so the original owner says back, Ot lav modis. 1 second, you are admitting, as we turn to Lamed Amabet, Dahai ara didiyu, that this land belongs to me. V'at los vintaminai, and you admit that you didn't buy it from me. So Zil, get out of here. Lav bal dvarim didiyat. I can't even litigate with you. You have no claim against me. I'm not the one who sold it to you. So get out of here. As the Rashbam says, take a look at the 4th line, last word, 4th widest line in Rashbam at the bottom of the page. Zil, last word on the line. Zil, mikarka shali, get out of my land. Lav bal dvarim didiyat. You are not my litigant. You don't have any claim against me. Va'ani muchsak ba yoter mimcha. I have a greater claim on this land, a greater hold on this land than you do. Shatalo hachzakta shloshanim. You don't get a chazaka for 3 years when you don't have a claim that says that you bought it from me. And that is in fact the case. Take a look. Amar Rava, Dina ka Amarlai. Rava says, oh, he's telling you the right law. Say, take a look. Rashi, back in Rashbam, excuse me. Next Rashbam. Hama'ar, Dina ka'amarlei hama'arer. Often it's very important to know that sometimes the wording of the opening words of the Rashbam are a continuation of the quote from the Gemara, and sometimes it's a new concept. But this is definitely one of those cases where it is a continuation. So Amar Rabba, Dina ka le hama'arer. The Rashbam is saying he told you the right ruling, the person who's complaining, namely the original owner. Va'afilu im hichzik ba shlosh shanim, even if you actually had been there for 3 years, Kamosha Pirashti, as I explained, the Chain Halacha, and the Halacha is actually like Rava's ruling in favor of the person who says that if somebody says that I bought it from so and so, and you show that that so and so never owned it, you don't even have to complain. So that's a very, very important fact. Okay.
Well, he can complain. He can say, "Get out of my house."
Oh, yeah. I'm saying you don't have to create an objection. You can whenever you make the claim for your field, even if it's after a chazaka, you will get it back if the person who's trying to take it away from you is saying that they bought it from someone else who isn't you, because you'll just say that person is a thief, and that.
So the middle person, quote unquote, whoever that middle is, the thief.
Correct. All right, so case number 4, and again, this is going to be a modification of case number 3. Very interesting modification. Listen to this. We're making the case harder and harder. And again, Rava found again in I think was this the other case too, right? In these last 2 cases, in cases 2 and 3, Rava finds for the original owner. Okay, Rava finds for the original. Now, again, remember, in case 1, he found for the occupant, right? It was not enough to say that I was there and present, because your presence means that you knew that the other guy was there, and effectively you allowed him to develop a chazaka without complaining. And so as a result, in that situation, we're going to say that you need to bring proof to kick the guy out. But when you have, at least in these last 2 situations, a valid basis for saying that you didn't know, or that there was no even claim that the occupant had no basis to claim the land from you. So then, so far, Rub is going to hold for the original owner. And so let's take a look and see how far that goes. So Ahuda Amrle Lechavre. So again, the original owner says, "My bais bahai ara. What are you doing in my land? Amrle miplanya zavina. I bought it from so and so. I bought it from this guy. V'achalte shnei chazaka, and I've been here for 3 years. Amrle. Well, so as a result, the original owner says back, well, Planya Gazlanahu, that guy's a thief. So, and Tosfos, let's take a quick look at Tosfos. Miplanya Zvint, top Tosfos on Lamanam Bet. Miplanya Zvinte Dizvanaminach, Va'achlte Shnei Chazaka. Amrle Planya Gazlanahu, right? Perish Yeshli Edim Shehu Gazlan. According to Tosfos, the original owner needs to have witnesses that he's a thief. Vafilu darbe chad yoma, and even if the thief was living there, hakaimalan de gazlan ein lo chazak. We say you have a general rule that if I can prove that the guy's a thief, well, the thieves don't get a chazaka. So as a result, that's not going to be sufficient. So Amrale, so by the way, Rashbam understands it a little bit differently and says that maybe there's no witnesses, but the thief was never on the land. So again, those are two different views of how we could view that particular case. So, but Amrle, so again, we'll deal with Stan and me. I'll be the original owner. Stan will be the occupant. Stan comes back and says, "Whoa, Vaha Isli Sade, I've got witnesses." Stan says, "De Asay Imlache Bach. I came to get advice from you. Va'amrat li zilzvin, and you told me to go buy this field." Whoa! So 1 second. So in that case, I've effectively told Stan to buy a field from a thief. So Amrle is what I'm saying. So Amrle, and I say back to him, Hasheni Noachli, you were an easier guy to get the field away from, Stan. Harishon Kashemen. The first guy was much harder. He had big muscles. I needed to worry about how he'd treat me, etc. You, I know you're a nice guy. You'll settle with me. So as a result, and Rava says, Amar Rava Dina Ka'amarle. Again, that is in fact the law. The law is like the guy who said, you know what, like that the original owner can give advice to somebody to say you need to that yes, go ahead and buy it. Now, it is important to note that the Rishonim debate the question of the exact nature of what the original owner said. Did he say, "I have no claims on this land"? Because if he actually made that statement, some Rishonim say that can't be what we're talking about, because then he would be telling an outright lie, and that would not be and then Stan would be able to rely on it. But if all I was saying is, yes, I think it will be good if you buy the land, I could be understood as saying, yeah, it'll be good for me. Might not be good for you, but it'll be good for me. Now, does somebody who says that violate the idea of putting a stumbling block before the blind? Probably. But okay, so that's the case number 4. Now we're going.
So what's the maskana here? That
the maskana
who keeps the land?
The original owner. The original owner gets the land, even though the buyer came to the original owner and asked him if he should go ahead and buy the land. The original owner told him, yes, you should go ahead and buy the land. Notwithstanding that, the original owner gets it. Now, come on. 1 second, the Gemara asks.
What? So first of all, I'm wondering if you're talking about the same piece of land. Person A goes to B, says, what's your advice about buying some land?
No. Okay. It's clearly got to be the same piece of land. Then it would not be a question. It's definitely the same piece of land. The issue is we're going to we'll follow those who are who say that it was not that nobody asked him directly, that the original owner was not asked directly whether you have any claims to the land. They were just asking for advice, but not about whether the person who bought it had valid title. So when it came to advice, a person does occasionally, right? The question is how much does the original owner saying yes, you should buy it, undermine the original owner's claim that he never sold it? And the answer that Rav is saying is that it does not undermine it. We can imagine somebody would actually tell somebody to buy that land, even though they had never originally sold it. So now that we're going to ask a question.
Does the owner concede in this sense that the land was really in the possession of someone else, it's quote a thief maybe, and
Yes.
and the other person says, comes to the owner, this quote unquote next occupant, says, should I buy that land? And the owner says yes, but the owner knows that the land is his own land. So why
That's
would he
right.
give advice to someone to buy land that supposedly someone stole from him?
That's exactly right. That's exactly the case. That's exactly the case. And Rava rules that the original owner gets it back, even though the buyer from the thief bought it, based on the original owner's advice. So Kaman, who is this like? The Gemara asks. Ka'admon, this seems to be like Admon, and the Admon argues with the Chachamim, as we'll see in this following Mishnah, which we saw previously because it was all the way back in Ksumus. But let's take a look and see and remind ourselves of what the Mishnah said. Ditnan, ha'orer al hasada, somebody's claiming a field. V'chasum aleha be'ed, but he actually also signed as a witness on the contract that allowed the other person who's holding the property to get the property. Admon Omer Hasheni Noach Li Harishon Kashe Manu, that the Admon's the one who says that the second one is easier for me to get the land from, and therefore I will sign on it, even though I'm not telling the truth. But Chachamim Omer, no, Ebed es Zechuso, he's forfeited, he's lost his right to claim the field. And so, because he signed as a witness on the contract that allowed the current occupant to buy the field. So doesn't that show that this has to be like Admon? And the halakha, of course, is like the Chachamim, not like Admon. So how could it be that Rava is saying what he's saying here? So the Gemara explains, no, afilu tema rabbanan. No, you can even say that it's the rabbis, that Rava's ruling is consistent with the rabbis. Hasam avad maisa. Over there, the person who was the original owner did an actual action by signing onto the contract. Aval hacha dibura avid inish demikre ba'amar. And people say things that aren't actually true. People will say things that may appear to be undermine their rights, but they won't actually do something that undermines their rights. So if they do something, that's greater evidence than if they just say something. Saying something, you might say it, but you know that in the end it'll be good for you, so that's why you say it, even though it's not true.
So there's a significant difference between a signature and advice.
Correct. Exactly. A signature is much worse. And that's why even the rabbis could agree with Rava's ruling. And that's exactly what Rava rules. Rava rules that that in the case where it's a signature, you will in fact forfeit your right to the original property. But if in fact all you did was give, so if I had signed on the document that Stan used to buy the land from the thief, well, then I would have no claim against him. Mm-hmm. But if instead I am just giving him advice to go and buy the land from the thief, well, then I retain my claim against him. So that's case number 4. Case number 5. Hahuda Amar Lechavre. So again, person says to his friend, my boys Bahayara, what are you doing in my land? Amar Le Miplanya Zavinta. I bought it from the guy of Achal Teshne Chazaka, and I've been here for the years of a Chazaka. Amar Le Plani Gazlanahu. That guy's a thief. Amar Le Baha Isli Sade da Asis Beurta Amrat Li Zvene Nehale. 1 second, but I have witnesses that say that you came to me last night and tried to buy this land from me. How can you now claim that it was always yours? You tried to buy it from me. Amar Le. So now the original owner says back, Amina, I said, is bin deny. I'm going to buy myself the ruling, meaning, and let's take a look at Rashbam. Amina lemizbandina. 1, 2, 5, 10, 50, about 18 lines, 19 lines up towards the beginning of the line. Amina lemizbandina. Amarti belibi, I said to myself, Tovli lichnos bedamim muatim karka haroi li. It's better for me to pay a little bit of money in order to buy the money that I really deserve, v'lo litroch v'lo v'olodin, and so as not to have to bother myself and go to court. But you refused to sell it to me for the low price that I offered you, and so as a result, that's why we're in court now. And Amarava Avid Inish Disivin Dine, people do that. People are willing to buy money even though they legally have a right to the item. And that's it. We actually see that even in today's world. People will buy things in order to quiet claims, even though they know that the claim is invalid. Hahuda Amrle Lechabre. So again, now case 6 and final
So
case
is this
today.
like a bribe, or is he paying him off, or what's?
Well, again, the point is that Stan bought it from we'll call the thief Tom the thief. So Stan bought it from Tom, and I last night went to Stan and said, "Listen, can I buy that field from you for $100,000?" And Stan's like, "No, it's worth way more than that." And I'm like, all right, fine. And I'll see, and then the next day I go to Stan, I sue him in court and bring him to Beit Din. And Stan says, what are you even talking about? You had effectively admitted that you didn't own it when you tried to buy it from me last night. And I say, look, the only reason I tried to buy it from you is because I didn't want to have to take you to court. But now that you didn't sell it to me, so I'm taking you to court. And so Rava ends up saying that people do make that kind of proposition to buy property, even though they could go to court, because people are willing to try and, even back in the days of the Gemara,
Yeah.
how much more so than today, people like to avoid court if they can. Right. So that's the point. Okay. So that's our situation. And
But he already owned, in his mind, he already owned the land. That it was
yes,
going to a
exactly. But
thief.
I was,
So
but I didn't
he's
want to have
willing
to
to
take.
he's willing to buy it, even though he already owned it.
Correct, because why should I have to go? It's such a pain. I have to go to court that's in Center Street or it's down on the concourse. I don't want to go to court. I would, if I can deal with it. It's how much time am I going to have to spend in court? How much time, what if the Stan hires witnesses that are false witnesses? There's so much that could go wrong and so much aggravation that's associated with it. Why should I bother with that if I could potentially buy my way out of the situation for less money than all of the costs associated with dealing with the court case? So that's what Rava is telling us, that people do that. And in fact, if you look in the world, you do see that people do that. People settle claims that they are likely to win because it's a lot of aggravation to go. It's so much hassle. So anyway, that's case number 5. Now,
It just
final.
seems that's not so, because the person who's supposedly muhsak, who's living there, who claims that he actually bought it, he says, I don't care how much money you're going to give to me. I want this house. I want to live here.
Absolutely, that's exactly what Stan says. But the bottom line is that so Stan is claiming that because I came to him, I was admitting, and we're going to say that is not a valid admission. So that's the point. So as a result, again, if I can prove that Stan bought it from somebody who's a thief, I will win.
Right.
Okay, so there's no again, I haven't undermined. The only way I undermine is to actually take an action. And then that would undermine. Hahuda Amrle Lechavre. So get last case. My boys, Bahayara, what are you doing in my land? Amrle Miplani Zvina Bachal Tishnei Chazaka. I've been here. I bought it from this guy, and I've been here for a number of years. Amrle Bahanakita Nakita Shtara Dezivnim Le Mine. 1 second. I have a contract that I bought the land from this guy 4 years ago. So you said that you have the years of a chazaka. Presumably that means that you were only here for 3 years. I bought this land from that same guy who you say you bought it from. I bought it from him 4 years ago. So you don't have any kind of rights here. So Amrle, so Stan says back to me, Mi Svarish Chazaka, Tulashani Kamina. You thought I meant 3 years when I said Chazaka. But you know what? Shnei Chazaka Tuva Kamina. I actually meant more years. And Rashbam explains that he meant 7 years. That in fact he had a Chazaka before I bought before my contract took effect. And even though he only responded with the precise number of years after I told him when I had my contract for. Amarava Avidi Inchi Dekaru L'Shnei Tuva Shnei Chazaka. That even more years than 3 years can be called the years of a chazaka. And so as a result, Bahani Mili, Da'achla Sheva. And this is talking about where he was there for 7 years. I'm sorry, so the Gemara itself tells us it's 7 years. The Kadam Chazaka, Dahai Shtara Dahach, because his chazaka, the chazaka of Stan, happened before my contract. So but Aval Shis, if he was only there for 6 years, as we turn to Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph, well, then my contract serves as an automatic, immediate, and permanent complaint and protest against Stan's occupation of the land. So if, in fact, Stan is not telling the truth, and bought it 6 years ago, and now I bought it 4 years ago, he will get kicked out and I will win. But if, in fact, Stan got there 7 years ago and is there on a, and has had the chazaka before the date on my contract, well, now all of a sudden Stan is going to win. And so we've now shown that, again, we began with the case where Rava finds that the buyer wins, and we are ending with a case where the buyer wins. And we had 4 cases in the middle where the buyer lost.
So the buyer bought the land 4 years ago, and maybe the Muksak, he bought it 7 years or 6 or 7 years ago, depending.
Correct. Exactly. The point is that originally, when we had the debate, right, I was telling him that I bought it from Tom 4 years ago. Stan said he had a chazaka, but he didn't say the exact number of years. And now he says, oh, you thought I might have just meant 3 years, but I actually have the chazaka for 7 years. And so as a result, my chazaka trumps your contract. And in fact, he is the winner because his chazaka happened before the date on my contract.
So in that case, it's not the owner, it's the one who's muksak, the owner.
Correct. In this case, unlike the first 5 cases, the original owner is not the one who's claiming it. The person who's claiming it just says that he owned it. He purchased it from the seller before the person who's who's occupying the property. And it turns out the occupier says, no. You thought that I was only an occupier here for 3 years, but I was an occupier here even before the date on your contract.
So the occupier wins the case, right?
Exactly. The occupier wins the case.
So that's not the wait, he's the occupier, but he's not the owner. So it's not a case of the owner, the original owner versus the occupier. It's a case of two different buyers.
Correct. That's exactly right. That's why I changed the language on the screen to claimant and occupant as opposed to original owner and occupant, which is what I used for the first 5 cases.
Right. So this is a little different than the first case.
Absolutely. A little different from each of the other cases that came.
Right. But the first, the ones in between, the owner kept it.
That's right.
In the beginning, the occupier kept it. So this is not an owner versus occupier. The last one, it's 2 claimants based on when they supposedly purchased it.
That's exactly right. So hopefully you're enjoying these interesting cases of conflicting claims. And if you are, please sure to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf when we consider this situation where one says that the property belonged to his father and the other one has a chazaka. So looking forward to continuing our learning together. Be well.
Yasher Kar.
Thank you.